So I, like in my coaching program, which is a little bit more extended, I talk about body, heart, mind, and spirit. Those are the four aspects that have to be in harmony and have to feed one the other in order for us to function well. And I think what happens is in a lot of the industries or a lot of the fields that gets dissected. So, you know, for a physician, for instance, would treat physical symptoms a lot of the time. In psychology, you would deal with mental issues, but you know, but a whole health and kind of complete recovery needs to coordinate those things, because the spiritual perception, or your worldview, if you want to call it, if you're not, you know, not a believer in God, your worldview, your perspective, your purpose, your values have to inform how you think, and your thinking in turn then informs how your emotional state corresponds to it, and then body just kind of follows wherever it's directed.
Yeah.
So, but that has to happen in coherence for total wellness, in my opinion.
Our perspective, we're flying high. Together we can touch the sky.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Rush Outrospective, a Mastering the Art of Living podcast. There are some people who help you manage the noise in your head, and then there are the rare few who teach you how to quiet it, not with distractions, but with truth. I know because I've been there myself, stuck, frustrated, doing all the right things, only to find myself going around in circles. And that's where today's guest, Nino Fincher, comes in. She's a rapid transformational therapy expert, a keynote speaker, and a two-time TEDx presenter who's built her life around helping people break free, not just from surface level struggle, but from emotional habits and mental wiring most of us don't even realize we're carrying. So whether you're coasting, collapsing, or quietly carrying more than you realize, this conversation's for you. You're listening to the Rush Outrospective, a Mastering the Art of Living podcast. I'm Eric Rush, and today we're stepping into the art of breaking free with Nino Fincher. Nino, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Again, you know, we'll take two, we say, right?
That's right. That's
we
right.
had some issues, technical problems the last time, and I apologize for that. You know, when you go through the editing process, you want to have the perfect product.
For sure.
And I really appreciate you coming down to
My pleasure. I
redo
understand.
this. It's such an important topic to talk about. Transformational therapy, the art of breaking free. So I'm so happy that you're here. It's a vital. I think it's vital that we get some information out that you possess, your knowledge, how God's credentialed your experience in life, and we're gonna get into it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Before we get into the methods and the framework of it, I just want to pull it back a little bit. For you, the work you do isn't just professional, right? It's personal. But what moment or experience made you realize that helping people break free wasn't just a skill, was something that you were called to do?
I think that the death of my grandfather really was a profound event in my life, and that's the event that kind of set me on a journey to ask a lot of existential questions, a lot of deep questions that people need to answer in order to find their purpose and understand why they're here. And so that kind of what started me trying to understand my destiny, why am I here, you know, and I think once I got clear on what the purpose of what I was doing was, knowing that it's designed to serve people, that really answered a lot of questions. So.
And your grandfather, what's his name?
His name was Shalva.
Shalva, okay.
Yep.
And does that have a significant meaning? I don't know.
It's a Georgian name. So my grandfather was from the country of Georgia, and it's a Azbegi, which is a mountainous region of just some very tough people. And so he was an extraordinary human, and I was very close to him. I learned a lot of important lessons to him. He was a veteran. And I had the utmost respect for the man, and I miss him deeply. Every time something important happens in my life, I wish I could share it with him first.
That's beautiful. In that process of going down this journey of trying to find your purpose, where was the connection? How did it interconnect with your grandfather's life?
My grandfather, I was raised in an atheist home, and we never really talked about God, but I do remember my grandfather praying before sleep every time, even though it was never brought up. I was raised in the Soviet Union. And so, so that was very curious for me always. And so when he passed away, suddenly thinking that this can't be the end of it all was a really profound thought that set me out on a journey to question. And so I started reading everything that was available to us. And we had an amazing library at home. We had all the religious texts, a lot of philosophical texts. So I just started reading, and kind of learning what the answers to big questions are. It is what got me to Christianity and got me to the place where learning about Christ and learning about his claims and learning about the overwhelming evidence for the authenticity of the Bible and the claims of the Bible made me decide that I had to make a decision one way or the other. I couldn't straddle the fence. I either had to reject it altogether, or I wouldn't be intellectually honest enough with myself if I didn't say, I need to put my faith in him.
That's awesome. I always wonder what the internal struggle is for someone who, who's an atheist, or, is or just grows up being an atheist, right? And the struggle to convert to Christianity, right? What do you think that individuals go through in their mind when they're trying to organize that?
Yeah, for me personally, it was very intellectual. I was raised in a home where I was taught to question everything, to not believe anything outright, and to make sure that there's sufficient evidence and all the right questions have been asked, etc. And so that the desire to really get clear on why you believe what you believe was essential for me. I was trained in that, but also it was important to me. And so I think for some people it's that. For other people, as one of my friends used to say, intent precedes the content. So it doesn't matter what the content is. If the intention is, I do not want to surrender my will to anyone else, and I don't want any authority over my life besides myself, then it doesn't matter how much evidence or proof you see of something being true. You want to hold on to that autonomy. And autonomy isn't the best way to know God. I think surrender and listening is.
Yeah, that is. I could, when you were saying it, I was just like, in someone who goes through that struggle, it's just very conflicted, from what a majority of society, is based on some faith, right? And then when someone doesn't have that connection, the battle that they're trying to, the pressure they're feeling from that, right?
It's very difficult because you end up being the solution to all of your problems. And we're flawed, and we don't have all the answers. And so convincing ourselves that we are the end all and we are the only truth that there is just kind of doesn't take you to the absolute truth, I think.
I think I had a friend one time who he said, he doesn't really believe in a higher power. I know where it's going, but it's an interesting conversation about this because, I had a friend that is an atheist, and he said, well, I don't have a higher power. And I said, well, I argued with him. I said, well, yes, you do. I said, look at this picture of you and your family. Who's your higher power in this? If you're looking at this picture, who's the higher power, right? The love for your family.
Right.
So the love for your family would be a higher power in many ways too.
Yeah. So definitions are important, obviously. How people define the terms and the concepts makes a big difference, and I think it helps to understand who means what when they say higher power and so on.
That's true. That is true. In my introduction, I said you're. Well, first of all, let's talk about your credentials. You mentioned something that you have been educated in particular fields. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
Share a little bit about what.
So I started out, my studies were in linguistics. So the language, the significance and the meaning of the words is really interesting for me and important. So And I speak several languages just by virtue of living in a country that allowed for that very easily. When I graduated, I became very curious about, it was at that time that my grandfather died, and so trying to find out what the answers to these questions were kind of led me to study theology. And so I did a year at Dallas Seminary, studied theology and Bible there, comparative religions as well, and then just as I was graduating, Dallas Seminary started a program in counseling and biblical counseling. And so I thought if you could combine psychology and theological concepts, it would be mind-blowing. And well, it turns out somebody did it before I did. And so, but that is what my master's was in. And then after that, I did postgraduate work in philosophy and ethics. So I've done all kinds of interesting things.
Wow, I mean, you talk about having wisdom, you're going through those particular academic or, specific genres of study, right? It's like, holy cow, that's like such a deep, you have more, I guess, do you feel like you can see things at a 30,000-foot view, a little bit clearer?
Some things, I would say, I don't think that knowledge necessarily gives you that.
Yeah.
Knowledge gives you a lot, but wisdom doesn't come from knowledge.
Yeah.
Wisdom comes from something altogether different.
Wow.
And so hopefully I've learned some things that were wise by virtue of observing how people interact, what God says about our nature, and or from the experience.
Yeah. In your studies, what did you see the unique commonality in different faiths, I would say?
We all want the same thing. We all are flawed. The Bible calls it born in sin, and we all strive for the freedom and the peace and all the beautiful concepts that, kind of like what your atheist friend was defining as higher power. All of those abstract concepts that we long after, immaterial concepts that we long after, are God possesses them, and He has them in His essence. And so without Him, I think it's difficult to get to them and successfully kind of download them and have them,
Yeah, when you think about how you fused, you connected faith and actual therapy. How do they come together? What is your?
I think the way I see it is my understanding of how Christ defines the condition of a human heart makes a big difference. And I think knowing that and seeing that helps me understand how people operate, what people long for, and what the struggles are. And it's just a different perspective from what you would get just from pure therapeutic point of view or psychological point of view.
Yeah, and from my personal experience, I'll testify that the most, I've had therapy with the VA counseling, and then I've also had therapy with a Christian
Yes.
Chaplain from the VA.
Right.
And having those come together, was probably the most rewarding experience I could have, from a rehabilitation standpoint.
Right.
It just seems so, one's more behavioral,
Yep.
and the other one's spiritual and internal.
Yes.
And your internal convictions.
Yeah. So I like in my coaching program, which is a little bit more extended, I talk about body, heart, mind, and spirit. Those are the four aspects that have to be in harmony and have to feed one the other in order for us to function well. And I think what happens is in a lot of the industries or a lot of the fields that gets dissected. So, for a physician, for instance, would treat would treat physical symptoms a lot of the time. In
Yeah.
psychology, you would deal with mental issues, but but a whole health and kind of complete recovery needs to coordinate those things, because the spiritual perception, or your worldview, if you want to call it, if you're not not a believer in God, your worldview, your perspective, your purpose, your values have to inform how you think, and your thinking in turn then informs how your emotional state corresponds to it, and then body just kind of follows wherever it's directed.
Yeah.
So, but that has to happen in coherence for total wellness, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I back you 110% with that. In my introduction, I said that you're a rapid transformational therapy expert. How does rapid transformational therapy help address the root cause of anxiety and PTS across cultural lines?
So again, because we're all designed the same way, a lot of these problems and frustrations that keep holding us back from moving forward are subconsciously held. And the great thing about rapid therapy is that it combines the three modalities that are very effective. It combines traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnosis, and neurolinguistics, and that combination allows us to get right to the root of the problem and then transform it cognitively in the state that allows you to focus exactly on that issue with your body completely relaxed and in not a hyper engaged way. And then linguistic part allows you to kind of rebuild the neural pathway that allows you to take a different path, literally, from what you are familiar with.
Wow. Do you have a real life example of what that might look like when someone's on a healing journey?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many client stories I could tell you. Most recent one, for instance, is a CEO that I worked with who has been struggling to move forward and make decisions and just kind of trust himself to just dive into whatever the next project is. And the reason for that has been him over the years not being confident enough that his father approves. And so his father is not around anymore, but that deep perception of why try if dad isn't satisfied just kind of shows up in the ways that he doesn't even recognize as that. So we dealt with that and made a difference for him.
Those soul tie, I guess, is that some kind of soul tie that's keeping him like, captured? Or
Yeah, I would ask you to define what you mean by that.
I guess like somebody who, I guess, that has that lived experience with his father that created a lot of emotional, in his soul, do you think?
I mean, when we're little, the influences around us are people in authority, whether it's our parents or our teachers or anybody who has some kind of a authority over us, and how we decide to either gain their approval or avoid punishment from them becomes sort of a pattern that we then follow subconsciously without often realizing it, and then it just shows up at the times where we have to make critical decisions. And so rapid therapy allows you to transform that, and usually within a session or two, which is amazing.
Wow. We'll have to do that. You and I have to dig deep. Have to warn you. No, just kidding. You don't know what you're getting into.
I know, right?
No,
we should do it live.
We should do it live. Let's go. Yeah, that'd be great. But I'll say this. When you're sharing that with me, do people sometimes like don't even realize that that's like, some people come in and they don't realize how deep, I say, beneath the surface,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Most people don't,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be extremely self-aware. And even people who are very focused and kind of observant and understand what's happening with their body and their mind still sort of neglect or don't understand the connection between the impact that something made. That seemingly, if they brought it up, would be something random and they wouldn't have paid attention to.
Yeah.
For instance, I had a client who, again, struggled with decision making. I don't know why that keeps coming up, but so she was in a park one time, and she ran to get some ice cream. And then, because there were a lot of people in the park, once she got the ice cream, then she couldn't find her people, her parents or her siblings, and she just kind of stood there with this ice cream looking around. And she would have never remembered that as a reason, or thought about it as a reason for why I'm struggling to make decisions and move forward. But that is what made an impact on her as a little child, and said, you can't go anywhere, you can't see. You can't see, you don't know where they are, you don't know where the security or safety is. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a really interesting way the mind operates and connects the dots. And so being able to help people see that and transform that is it's the most rewarding thing.
That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, like just I can sense, I spent years in rehabilitation programs. So for me, when I hear you talk about it, I can kind of relate,
yes,
for sure.
Yeah.
When we think about the psychology, theology, and you also do fit. You're a personal trainer as well,
yeah,
right? You kind of intermingle with all three. What is there an example of where psychology, theology, and fitness working together? When they working together, is there an example of when they had a breakthrough with all three together?
Yeah, I mean, before, when I worked with people who struggled with depression, I often would prescribe boxing to them. And not everybody, obviously, but it was a great way to release a lot of the anger. A lot of the times, I think depression is an anger turned inwards. And allowing your body to release that tension is very helpful. So what we need to do, I think, to transform is, once we are informed by what our worldview or desire is, then aligning our thinking with that produces the chemicals and emotional state that locks in that clarity. And then your body, it becomes a function of just moving that emotion through and aligning you to that. So yeah, I mean, all of those parts have to work together in order to get to the freedom.
Yeah, freedom. What myths around anxiety and trauma do you challenge in your work?
That can be healed. Or it can be changed, or people say, I'm an anxious person, or I have anxiety, or this is my anxiety. They keep trying to own it. Anybody who says this is my, and then attach some kind of a disorder or a habit or a state that is dysfunctional to it, your mind is going to fight to hold on to it, because it identifies it as something that you own. And so people, a lot of the times, are very skeptical about being able to change things. I just spoke with a gentleman who's been in therapy, I think he told me since 18. He's 61 now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long time to be in therapy for the same issues.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Is that some form of security blanket in some way too? Like, that's the emotion they...
Yeah, for some people it is. I mean, it's, subconsciously, there's different reasons for it, obviously, but in the most, the saddest cases would be that people use it as some kind of a function to fulfill something that they don't know how to fulfill in any other way. It may be attention, or it may be an opportunity to stand out in some way as a victim of something, or everybody cares about me, and so we subconsciously desire after that, but we get it through the means that aren't healthy or helpful.
Yeah. Where does prescription medicine fall into that? How is it? What are the, how is it impacting negatively? I guess we'll start with that, and then maybe positively.
Yeah, well, I'm not a physician, obviously, but I think that function of medication is to temporarily give you assistance until your body heals itself. Obviously, there are exceptions, but oftentimes people, it becomes a crutch and it becomes something, a safety net, rather than thinking of it as a temporary solution to get you over the bridge until you can walk yourself, or until you can think yourself, until you can, support yourself. And I think if more people perceived it that way, I think we would have less dependence or need for a lot of the medication that's continuously prescribed or sought after.
Going back to us doing it live, I know I kind of laughed a little bit about it, but I'd be game. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to expand.
Yeah.
Reach, stretch myself. So let's figure out when we can do that.
You
That'd
never
be awesome.
know. We might. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. You talked about your 8-week program, right? What makes your 8-week program effective, and can you walk us through how it's designed a little bit?
So this is kind of what my TED talk was about, and I call it the MOVE framework. It's MOVE.
Okay.
And in MOVE, M stands for creating movement in order to get to the momentum. You cannot get to the momentum until you make a decision and start creating at least one change or one type of movement in your life that is different from what you were used to doing. And O stands for overcoming, and that's where rapid therapy comes in. Rapid therapy is part of my coaching program with my clients, and so being able to really get deep down and dirty and understand what that thing is that makes you think that you can't overcome it or haven't overcome it. That's what we deal with. And then value is where my training my purpose clarity session comes in, and that's where you have to understand what is it that you want and why do you want it. And that's where we do a purpose clarity session. I work with the Purpose Company, and they have developed one of the most incredible tests, comprehensive tests on understanding what your purpose is, what your maximum fulfillment and frustration is, and so we address that. And then E has to do with the expectation and how you perceive the outcome, and how you create the clarity for your mind and set your mind in such a way as to expect something that will move you to success. And so those are the things we address in the 8 weeks, or roughly 8 weeks.
Yeah, I actually have been talking to the people from the Purpose Company.
Right.
Somebody, I think I may
Eric,
have emailed.
maybe?
Yeah, I think it is Eric.
Yeah,
I
connected you guys.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's right. Yeah, you did. I forgot. Yeah,
Yep.
I was like, how did that happen? Yeah.
That's right, magic.
Yeah. Where do most people hit resistance in that journey when they're in your program, and what tends to break it open?
I think fear is huge. Fear of, you name it, attach whatever you want. Fear of failure, fear it's not going to work, fear that, I'm not good enough, or I won't be able to connect, or fear is huge. I could talk about fear all day. And
We'll have to do a podcast
yeah,
alone for that.
it's just, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And holds people back, definitely. So I think that would be one of the biggest challenges, and lack of confidence in themselves. But a good therapist who understands what they're doing, or as anybody who understands what they're doing, I think is able to communicate why the solution is available, and why the solution is possible for anybody that come their way. And so I think it's kind of my job to help people understand why you don't need to be held back by that, if the success is available. I think Jillian, I forget her name, Jillian Michaels maybe, or Jillian, anyway, lady from The Biggest Loser.
Yeah, Jillian Michaels.
She once, I heard her once say, "Why choose failure when success is an option?" And I think it's a great statement.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I was going to ask you, was a question on okay. We talked about, you talked a little bit about, good psychologists, right? How does someone go about, someone who's saying, I'm going to seek help?
Yeah.
How do you organize it how do you get to a place where I need to pick a psychologist and I don't know what to look for?
Yeah.
What would you?
That's hard. I think, to me, I think a person who social proof basically is huge. Like being able to speak with people for whom this therapist or professional has made a difference, and then maybe even interview the professional, understand what their perspective is on healing or recovery. What is it that they think the outcome can be? What, how much of an engagement do they expect from me? What is it that they have worked with? I mean, just kind of getting a good, clear understanding of who is it that you're working with and whether or not they're going to be rooting for you and really will want to put themselves out of business. Do you know what I mean? Would be a good way to check.
That's pretty. I think. Yeah, it sounds like it sounds simple, right? But in the outside, someone's at home right now dealing with some issues. They don't know how to go about it. But now that you've offered that, it's even me. I was like, oh yeah, social proof. You have to.
Yeah, just ask. Ask for testimonials. Ask if it's possible for you to speak with somebody they've helped. Ask about some of the cases that they worked on, perhaps that are related to what a person is dealing with.
How do you define real progress in therapy?
You don't need me anymore.
Yeah.
You can do it yourself. It's not a very lucrative way to do it, but the truth is I don't want to see you a lot. Like I just want you to get clear on how your mind operates, what to do with your emotional state, align all of that, and go make decisions on your own. You're capable. You don't need me for everything. I mean, it's nice to my clients come back and do a little check, or there's some interesting moments, and we usually just do coaching. But I've never had anybody come back for the same issue to me, which is I'm thrilled about that.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm kind of going, okay, that's why, just, like I'm thinking about how, like I said, I've been in therapy before, so I know what's the point where you go, and I think you just said it, it's like when you don't need me anymore.
Right, stop coming,
stop coming.
We can
You're
go
good.
for coffee, if which is not really appropriate, but I'm just saying, like, you shouldn't have to need a therapist forever and ever. Coach, but, it's not, I think that at some point, my goal is to equip people enough with the tools and the skills and understanding so they can now do it for somebody in turn. One of the veterans I worked with, an extraordinary human being who was struggling with PTS, amazing musician, hasn't played in years. So we worked, we did a session, and he started playing, started creating amazing music, and now he's thinking about starting a music shop and assisting other veterans through music. I mean, that's wonderful, isn't it?
That's freaking cool,
So it's very cool. So that's the success right there.
That's awesome. I told my friend that just the other day, the same friend I was talking about was like, he's going to counseling session for a certain thing. I said, man, your counselor's only going to do so much work. How much work are you doing outside of that counseling session? It's only 1 hour, and maybe once a month, or whatever many times you take. But
it's like paying personal trainer and then expecting the fat is just going to disappear once a week.
So I challenged him. I said, you find a book, and I'll read that book with you.
That's great.
We got a book we're reading. What's it called? I forgot what it's called.
That's beautiful.
No Bad Parts. That's what it's called.
Nice.
What role does faith play in your process?
I don't push my faith on anybody. I think nobody wonders whether or not I'm a believer. I mean, I'm very open about Christ transformed me. He's my Savior. He's my life, and I'm not afraid of death because of him. And he is really the freedom for me. And so I want people to understand what exactly he did and what his claims are and why he is unlike everything and everybody else. But when it comes to me helping people, those who are open to that, I'm happy to discuss it with them. For those who are not, they have to determine what their values are, and then they're going to have to align their values with how they operate. And sometimes they will find that there are challenges because they're not always necessarily based in truth, perhaps, from my point of view. But, you know, again, in rapid therapy, I don't address it very much unless the client requests it. But in coaching, I want the client to determine where their worldview and the value system needs to, you know, is, and how that informs what they want to do in life.
Curious to know what, like, faith internally for you, when you to continue to, you have to have some strength somehow, right? Like you to go through walk with people through their own journey. How does in that capacity, where does faith lie in, you know, in your?
For me personally, I understand who I am, and that foundation is not changing. If I lose everything tomorrow, I still will have my identity, because it's rooted in somebody who is not changing and who is solid, and I don't have to prove myself to them. Everything I do as a Christian is out of gratitude for what God did for me first, not to prove myself or to earn something from Him.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible place of peace and rest and comfort. But then, as you have that foundation, and as you understand sort of what God's perspective on human behavior, human condition, the condition of a human heart, the choices that inform, you know, the decisions that people make, and as they make choices, and so on and so forth. For me personally, that brings a lot more clarity than any psychology book can, because nobody identified a condition of a human heart better than Christ, in my opinion.
Wow, that's awesome, because you know, as someone who walks that journey, you know, the Christian journey, as myself, when I listen to you say that, it's like a very profound perspective of how, you know, knowing who you are, and, you know, have based on solid foundation that you believe in, and that powers, that gives you that empowerment and that strength and
freedom
and gratitude. I think the word gratitude was a beautiful word for you to use. I was like, wow, to have this gratitude to be able to assist other people in whatever they're dealing with. Last question. How do you keep clients engaged, especially those skeptical of traditional therapy?
How do I keep them engaged?
Yeah.
I think it's good when people have questions, and it's good when people are curious, and I think it's my job to help them understand clearly how rapid therapy works, why it works, give them, you know, kind of like when interviewing a therapist, give them stories of who it worked for, why it worked that way, how your mind operates, how your heart is designed to operate, how your nervous system operates, and why this method makes sense and is the best way to get them to where they need to go.
That's awesome. Okay, this is the part where I do my guests. I tell my guests to give a person, a team that you may know, somebody, some encouragement. Just call them out by name. Say, I want to give this message out to A, B, and C.
Oh.
And say, I want to just encourage you, or just want to say, I thank you for your help and all that, whatever.
Well, I just thank you to the veterans, to all of our veterans. I appreciate your service, and I'm so grateful for men and women who do this extraordinary work. And so absolutely a shout out to all our vets. And, you know, and I've had so many incredible teachers in my life that I could list them all day. Like somebody said, we stand on the shoulders, and that's what gives us the ground and the height, right? So, but I'm very thankful for all of my professors who taught me how to think, how to analyze things, how to ask good questions and the right questions. I'm grateful to my parents for giving me the freedoms that I needed to study and to travel and to move around. I'm thankful to my husband and my children for giving me the space to do all the exciting things that I get to do. And yeah, I'm grateful to Christ, because without him I'd be looking in despair and fearful, and he gives me purpose, he gives me clarity, and he's the one I'm looking forward to being with.
That's beautiful. Okay, so if people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm very findable, so LinkedIn is the easiest way. That's the platform that I'm most active in, or my website, it's ninofit.com. It's NINOFIT.com, and you can get in touch with me through that easily.
Nino, we did it the second time.
That's right.
The first time was fantastic. Unfortunately, there was audio issues and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and I think the file got corrupt or anything like that. But it's a pleasure. I think like so many beneath the surface thoughts that you share today. It's so beautiful to share this experience with you, get to know you better.
Likewise.
I do want to try the therapy, the transformational
Sure, we
therapy
can
for
talk
sure.
about it.
We'll figure it out, and I'm down anything that'll break free and have that
Yes.
freedom, more freedom, right? More
For sure.
I think that word freedom is like is a
everything.
undervalued word in
That's
many ways.
everything.
Yeah.
Because it's a beautiful word. Freedom, because with freedom you have peace. With freedom you have choice. With freedom you have fearlessness. It's everything.
Do you have a favorite quote? We can leave with a favorite quote.
I have so many. We were just talking about freedom. I said, "Whoever the Son sets free is free indeed." That's a beautiful verse, right? But I think.
I know I put you on the spot.
Yeah, I have a lot of good quotes that I like. Anything that C.S. Lewis has said, I always enjoy. But it's, I'll tell you, I'll give you a quote by Richard Sibbes.
Okay.
He wrote a book called A Bruised Reed. He said, "There is no certainty as the certainty gained after a doubt." Because when you have gone through a doubt and gotten clarity on the other side of it, it's so solid and it's so powerful that nothing can shake that. And I like that quote.
That's awesome. I'm going to keep that in my mental registry for sure. I'm going to investigate. Knowing me, like after this, I'll be like,
That's
what
great.
is this? What is this?
That's
and
great.
I'll do a deep dive just on that for sure.
Richard Sibbes, there you go.
All right, Nino, thank you very much again for
pleasure.
having me on the podcast. It's a blessing to know you and to have you as a friend.
Likewise.
And look forward to continued growth between you and I and everything we do.
Same. Thank you, Rush.
All right, guys, that's it for the Rush Outrospective, a Mastering the Art of Living podcast. As I always say, have peace and enlighten you, and remember that the ocean refuses no river.